Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for it's tight end week. We're going to be looking at tight ends all week. I'm going to start out by going through giving them some tiers, giving them a little bit of rankings here. Not going to go through which ones are ahead of each other within each tier. If you would like to see my specific rankings, you can go up onto the website, www.theFFforge.com. Want to let you know, at the end of the video, there are going to be some channel announcements. If you have any kind of interest in a listeners league, check out those announcements. And this is perfect timing for the tight ends. Darren Waller just announced his retirement earlier on this week, or what day is it? Geez. Last week, I did update my rankings, moving Darren Waller quite a ways down, and that was in part what moved Malik Neighbors up in my rankings, if you didn't see that in the wide receiver videos. So maybe that's what I wanted to let you know. If you're not aware, wide receivers I did last week, so go ahead, check out those videos. And then just like last week, this week, I will go over my sleepers and my busts Wednesday and Friday. So now let's get on into this. We're going to start off just going in order here, and I haven't looked at these rankings for a while, so we'll see if I don't disagree with some things already. Starting off with Ben Sinnott here. He's going to go into my misfits and more backups group. I'm really liked his profile in the draft and everything. Was happy, excited to see him go as high as he did in the draft. I actually predicted him going to Washington as he did. I think a round later than he actually went to Washington, but I was still like, that was still high compared to what the average draft position of Ben Sinnott was for the actual draft. All terminology has changed over to fantasy football for me. Regardless, Ben Sinnott, really like him, but I do think that he's going to a situation here with enough going on elsewhere. And then I think, isn't there Zach Ertz there too? Yeah, when you factor in the fact that Zach Ertz is also there, who I am fairly high on, I don't see him being fantasy viable, not yet in his career, but look for him in the future is what I would say. That's going to bring us on to Brock Bowers, a guy who we shouldn't have to wait as long on. But, I'm not too optimistic about him. We're going to go with slightly optimistic. By the way, I should have probably recapped this. The tiers are the S tier at the top. I couldn't think of a better name. It's the S tier guys. Then we've got the high risk, high reward guys, followed by business as usual. Some of these names might just make more sense once I fill them out for you. Then we've got the slightly pessimistic crew, followed by the slightly optimistic. I know that might feel kind of weird to have them in that order, but slightly pessimistic because I'm concerned about drafting where I'm going to be having them. Slightly optimistic because, hey, maybe these are the guys I'd rather wait upon rather than grabbing these guys despite the rankings, is kind of how that's going to work out, I believe. And we've got TJ Hawkinson tier. If you can imagine, this is going to be a tier of 1. Then we've got our fingers crossed tier, finger crossed. I think that was supposed to be plural. Top-notch backups, more pessimism, followed by misfits and more backups. So just guys that we didn't want to completely ignore here. That is going to bring us on to David Njoku. Did I finish Brock Bowers? I'm not overly optimistic about that. He's going to, probably have one of the worst quarterbacks throwing to him, an offense that wants to run a lot, limited amount of pass work. Awesome if it works out year one. I'm going to probably be sticking away from that for the most part and trying to grab a guy earlier or, I shouldn't say that. I'm either grabbing one of the earlier guys, or this is probably about the tier that I'm going to take a couple of shots on. So there we go. That's Brock Bowers. I think there's a couple of guys I like more than him. Let's move us on to David Njoku. We can't spend that much time on everybody, but David Njoku, slightly pessimistic about this offense. A lot of what he did last year was very much correlated with when Joe Flacco was at quarterback. You look at the stats, elsewise, it's fine, but it's definitely not the same. And they also brought in a couple more wide receivers there to compete. Just overall, a lot of concerns, so I'm slightly pessimistic about David Njoku, despite really wishing I wasn't. I really like David Njoku a lot as a person, from everything I can tell. I mean, I don't know him, but seems to be a really good guy, seems to put it all out there. I think that he is going to end his career, looking like an even better tight end than he has been up to this point in his career. That's going to bring us on to Dawson Knox, top-notch backup. Look, if Dalton Kincaid goes down, Dawson Knox will be a guy that you will be flocking to the waiver wires to get if your tight end position is not keyed in, or you didn't get lucky with one of these guys. That's going to bring us on to Donald Parham Jr., which I think we can assume that that's going to be... no, I have forgotten. I think, is he the lead tight end? Okay, so I have our lads up here because that caught me a little bit by surprise. And if you look, he's the tight end 3 here. I'm sure I'm much higher than him than experts. He'll probably be on my sleeper list, so I won't go into it too much. But basically, I'm expecting him to be like the receiving tight end out of these guys, or have a chance at it. So more so right now, we're just going to keep an eye on how things end up working out throughout the off season. He's definitely a guy who could fall. I probably have him near his ceiling, but that's why we've got our fingers crossed for him. That's going to bring us on to Evan Ingram, who is a guy that I am S-tiering it. That's right, S-tiering it. It comes down to how I expect that offense to operate. What I do expect is this very vertical offense to, be somewhat successful for fantasy purposes, if not a little boom or bust. But if there's one element of it I don't think will be boom or bust, beyond Christian Kirk, I suppose it's Evan Ingram, the other reason. So I expect these underneath guys to be fairly, useful and good beyond maybe even what they've been in recent years, in part due to the fact that they are going to get more vertical, which is going to make it all the more tough to cover them and give them just a little bit more running room, open space to work with when they do get the ball in their hands. That's going to bring us on to George Kittle, who is going to be high risk, high reward. There's, as long as that offense stays like it is, there's just so many weapons, so many targets that you have to essentially predict you either have to live with the almost nearly 0-point games from George Kittle sometimes to the number 1 tight end of the week for 4 games out of the season, which is great for a tight end. But so very volatile, and that's because of all the weapons there in San Francisco. As long as that's not changing, then I don't think how George Kittle, works as a fantasy player changes, which brings a lot of risk to it. And you have to, you can try to predict which weeks are going to be the weeks that George Kittle goes off on, but doing so is, it's a tough task because sometimes, Kyle Shanahan's 2 steps ahead of you, and what you think is the obvious deployment of George Kittle that week ends up being the exact opposite. That's going to bring us on to Gerald Everett, who is a misfit, more backup kind of guy. Not too excited about that situation there, so we'll keep an eye on it. That's going to bring us on to Greg Dulcich, another guy, misfit backup. I could put him up in the fingers crossed, but I guess I'm maybe a little bit more jaded on him. And then you got the surrounding situation I don't think is going to be as nice for tight ends as this situation here for Donald Parham Jr., who's, I think, shown more than Greg Dulcich somehow at this point in his career. So we'll keep our eyes on Greg Dulcich. That's why we have these guys still on the list. That's going to bring us on to Hunter Henry, who is more pessimism. Year in and year out, there's 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks where he goes off, but I think very rarely do the people who actually have Hunter Henry benefit from that. Usually they try playing him afterwards and they get 0 points from him or something. They get absolutely knocked by him. It's just been very inconsistent, and I don't know why we expect that to change this year with the quarterback situation being what it is. So I'm not too optimistic about that. In fact, there's more pessimism than there was earlier in the rankings for me. That brings us on to Isaiah Likely, who I think we can say I'm going to be. Where are we? All right, top-notch backup. So optimistic, but, we got to be realistic, too. The starter's going to be up here any given week when the starter's playing. I don't know. I think they probably will get Isaiah Likely a little bit more involved, but it shouldn't be enough for fantasy purposes. But the moment that Mark Andrews goes down, which he has the last 2 seasons, Isaiah Likely is going to be a guy that if somebody in your league doesn't have him, you're going to be wanting to go to your bench. You're going to be wanting to pick off of waivers, assuming you need a little bit of help. So bring us on to Cade Otton, who, that's it. More pessimism. Unfortunate. I really, really like Cade Otton. It's going to be a new offense there, just based on how he performed last season. Hoping for a step forward, but I'm not so sure about it. Baker Mayfield seems to want to, push the ball a little bit more than getting into the tight end. Then you've got Rachaad White at running back, who really soaks up a lot of the targets that if he wasn't there, if they just had a bruising running back, Kadon would probably get a fair amount of those targets and be very viable. But they just aren't there most of the time, so I'm not too optimistic about that. But hey, new offense could totally get him more involved. You never know. Jatavian Sanders is up next. Kind of a misfit here. Not expecting a whole lot out of that offense. He's a rookie tight end, etc., etc. Just not overly excited about that situation. It's going to bring us on to Jake Ferguson, a situation that I was well on top of last season, and this year he's going to be business as usual. And the reason that I liked him last offseason was higher than the experts on him last year, and kind of really, vouching for taking Jake Ferguson in drafts. I think he was a guy who wasn't even necessarily going drafted, even maybe mostly wasn't going drafted, if I recall correctly, until might have been one of those guys who gained a little bit of steam late in the offseason as people picked up on the fact that, you got Dak Prescott throwing to you. It's not like they had a guaranteed any receivership after CeeDee Lamb behind him. And then not only do you have Dak Prescott throwing to you, but you're in this Cowboys offense, which Mike McCarthy has year after year consistently been pretty good for fantasy tight ends, and so has Dak Prescott. And so, and Dak Prescott and Jake Ferguson, had showed something in some limited time where he actually got on the field the year prior as a rookie or as a second-year guy. So now coming into his third, fourth year here after last season, to me, this is business as usual for the Cowboys, for Mike McCarthy, for the tight end spot on the Cowboys, for Jake Ferguson, all the above, expecting Dalton, what was his name who used to be there? Yeah, Dalton Schultz. Just a continuation of that kind of production. Business as usual. It's going to bring us on to Jelani Woods, who we've got our fingers crossed for Jelani Woods. Suffered an injury early on last year. Didn't really play at all last year. If he did play at all, it might have been an off-season injury. Second year, pretty highly drafted with a receiving profile that's really, really impressive, can take the tops off defenses. Something I think that this, quarterback of theirs definitely knows how to do. His nickname being that of a gun because he's got one hell of a gun. So Jelani Woods is a guy who I'm definitely keeping my eyes on. I'm not, the slightly optimistic tier is basically where I want to be lastly kind of drafting guys from. Well, maybe the TJ Hawkinson, but if I'm taking like two tight ends, then we're dipping into this tier. So he's kind of like a tight end too for me. After that, I don't even really want to be drafting these top-notch backups unless I really got a deep bench or something like that in my league, or a tight end premium league. Maybe then you start thinking of that. So that's going to bring us on to the next guy here, Jeremy Ruckert, who we'll just keep our eyes on that situation. Another tight end who, not an incredibly amazing receiving profile like somebody like Jelani Woods, but definitely has the ability of a Jake Ferguson, I would say, maybe even higher than that for Jeremy Ruckert overall. So keep him in mind. Johnny Munt also performed really well. He's going to get a decent amount of time as the starting tight end, I believe, for the Vikings. The issue is, a lot of question marks surrounding that. So probably not going to be drafting that. Jonnu Smith, another guy who misfit here, is going to be... I think there's a little bit of reason for optimism. Where is he? I even forgot that now. Yes. Jonnu Smith with Miami now. I'll have to double check my rankings on that. Might be more of a fingers crossed kind of guy. It's just at this point in his career, I think it's just hard to think about drafting that. Not that he didn't have some decent production last year as the tight end number 2. With, God knows who throwing to him at quarterback. Let's bring us on to Juwan Johnson, who is a guy who I've consistently been pessimistic on, and it has worked out to me being correct, I believe, overall with Juwan Johnson. I think very rarely have people been able to capitalize on the weeks that he has had, and he's been getting, I think, way overdrafted, way overbuzzed year over year as of late. I don't know what the buzz is going to be this year on him, but just not overly optimistic about that situation. I don't think it changes a heck of a lot. It's going to bring us on to Kyle Pitts, a guy who I might have been wrong on last year, a little too high for sure. Situation's changed here. Now we actually do have a quarterback. Now things could go poorly again. You got the injury that going to be coming back from with the Aaron Rodgers injury. I know what this is, the calf. So things could not go well. But and then is he going to be looking more like he did 2 years ago, more like he did coming out of college? I know the injury really hampered him last season. A lot of people said it looked like he was running in quicksand type of deal. So is he going to be able to hit that second gear again or third gear again? We'll see. So there's questions surrounding that. Definitely a guy we want to listen to the headlines on all offseason. That's going to bring us on to Luke Musgrave. I am slightly optimistic about Luke Musgrave, no doubt about that. Second-year player. I was quite high on him in the draft last year. Sam Laporta was a little bit higher than him, but they were in the same kind of tier for me. And yeah, I mean, he's just going to continue to improve. This is a Shanahan system. Could he be the George Kittle of this offense? I assume he's going to be inconsistent, but does he have that kind of ceiling? It's possible. He can get vertical. He can attack down the seam and everything. A lot of upside there. So slightly optimistic about Luke Musgrave, and just you saw Jordan Love be successful last year and everything. So yeah, Mark Andrews is up next, and he's still an S tier guy. The injuries have killed him, and I got to tell you, he's killed my last two championships. Runs for the championship, as I've been not able to reproduce that production for where I've been drafting him, and my teams have just kind of tanked after he's gone down. So that is one of those things when you're drafting to keep in mind. Even though I got him in the 4th round, still. Yeah, who knows how? Maybe I wouldn't have gotten to the playoffs if I didn't draft him at all. So that's going to bring us on to Chig Okonkwo. As you can see, I already moved him there. Misfits, more backups there for Chig. I wish I could be more optimistic about him, but I'm just not at this point, given what we've gotten in terms of fantasy. Need to see something more. Michael Mayer is up next here, and he's going to be right there. I think he'll be a good tight end. Very good for actual teams, But in terms of fantasy football, you need to catch the ball and do stuff with it, and that's just not going to be him on any kind of reliable basis, especially as long as Brock Bowers is there. But, there's other questions about that offense as well. That's going to bring us on to Mike Gesicki. Same here, just not too optimistic about that. Another guy who gets, I think, a little bit overblown year over year. Noah Fant is going to come up next here, and maybe I'm being a little too optimistic here. I got my fingers crossed. I do think let me see if I talk about him in my Sleepers or Bust video. Yeah, check out my Sleepers video where I'm going to be talking about Noah Fant, but I've got my fingers crossed on that one. I do think that this offense could work out for him pretty well. Pat Freiermuth up next here. This is going to be probably a better situation than fingers crossed, right? Slightly optimistic about Pat Freiermuth. And I want to be more optimistic, but the quarterback situation, what I will say is there is reason for more than slight optimism. There is reason that I could move him up into the slightly pessimistic tier for sure, and that would just be the fact that the Arthur Smith offense is actually, despite all evidence when it comes to Kyle Pitts, but when you think about Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts combined, the Arthur Smith offense has been good for tight ends, typically speaking, and I think Pat Freiermuth is very good at it. Last year, injury really, really hampered him, and then, by the time that he's coming back, maybe healthy, if he was even healthy when he came back, really, everything else is kind of falling apart offensively, so, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but pretty true. So, I'm optimistic or I'm pessimistic, depending on how we want to think about it, but they're not quarterbacks that are known for throwing the ball to the tight ends a whole lot. Although, a guy who I'm going to have a little bit higher on here, Cole Kmet, did have Justin Fields throwing to him a lot of last year, so, he'll be in that range, one of these two, slightly optimistic, not quite business as usual, though, yet for Pat. You got to see it. Sam Laporta is, he is business as usual, but his business is S tier already, man. What an impressive start to his career, and you got to think that year 2 could be even better. So bring us on to TJ Hawkinson, who goes in the TJ Hawkinson tier. This just comes to the fact that, he's going to be missing, not coming back until, halfway through the year, and then even when he comes back, this is going to be a Vikings offense that I think wants to run the ball to help their rookie quarterback, who even if he doesn't start the season, I assume by this point in the season will probably be the starter. And yeah, just enough questions about that. I don't want to kill my roster drafting him too early. So this was just after where he ended up being in my rankings. Taysom Hill comes up next, and Taysom, I'm going to be more pessimistic about it, but I do see, there is an opportunity for Taysom Hill with this new offense, but at the same time, there's a chance that he's used way less in this new offense. I know I've seen reports to the contrary of that, but this early in the offseason, even just in general, all offseason reports, we'll see what this offense looks like week 1, week 4, not in the preseason and everything. That can all be very misleading. Travis Kelce, still S tier. He has continuously taken slight steps back, become less and less worth, drafting him overly high, but also has still proven to be worth it, especially when it counts. So until he doesn't do it, I guess we're going to leave him here. But he might not be my tight end 1. Spoiler alert to my rankings. Once again, rankings up on the website, www.theff4s.com. You can just look down in the description as well for that. Trey McBride, going to make it into this S tier, man. Really impressive. The target share is there for him to be impressive again. And not much more to say about that. Just took him a little bit longer than Sam Laporta, but seems to be there, and the connection seems to be there with Kyler Murray as well. It's going to bring us on to Tucker Kraft, the other guy there, and Tucker Kraft is going to be a top-notch backup. We saw it last year when Luke Musgrave did go down. He's a different type of receiver. He's going to be more of a possession guy, I would say, than Luke Musgrave, who's more of a take the top off of the defense kind of guy. But he has a little bit of an it factor from going back to my scouting on him 2 summers ago. And, just expect him to get even better this year, really. So if he does get a chance as the tight end 1, Luke Musgrave goes down, I'm not too concerned about throwing him out there. Cole Kmet is next up. He's going to be slightly pessimistic about rookie quarterback situation, all the weapons that he does have to throw to. A little bit of concern there for me. Just, a couple things changing surrounding that situation. It's not going to be the same as last year. So, just a little pessimistic about that and what kind of target share he's going to end up having with all the other weapons that are available. So that's some concerns. That's going to bring us on to Tyler Conklin, who's just not quite in this misfit group. He's still a guy who might be somewhat useful, reliable-ish, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing to him now too. A couple more touchdowns throughout the year. He was surprised. He's surprisingly okay in fantasy if you look at where he does on the season, because he's like consistently okay every game, and that kind of adds up. You want 4 points, you put Tyler Conklin in, type of deal. And maybe there's just a little bit more spice to that next year. Tyler Higbee is going to be going into the more pessimism here for me. I'm not optimistic about that situation for him. He's not been too great. Just kind of another one of these guys, mediocre, who I would rather leave out there. I would rather just take one of these top-notch backups at that point, assuming I don't need somebody starting, assuming I've gotten somebody who can start for me prior to that in the draft. Kind of how that works out. Zach Ertz is going to be coming up next for me. I believe he'll be in my sleeper video, I'm sure, because I'm quite high on him. Slightly optimistic about the scenario for him. The amount of pessimism and where he's ranked by the ECR experts makes me feel like I'm missing something. So if I'm missing something, let me know. What am I missing here for Zach Ertz? So that's going to bring us on to Dallas Goedert here. And Dallas Goedert's going to make it into the business as usual group. What is that for Dallas Goedert? He's going to be ranked somewhere in the top 12 tight ends for me is what that means. It's been a little bit of a letdown as of late. I still think it's a new offense too, so there's a little extra reason for optimism. That's just how my projections worked out as well, that he's in this area, so business as usual. Let's bring us on to Dalton Kincaid. He was just a rookie last year, did quite well. I told you not to be too optimistic about him last season for as long as he was splitting work with Dawson Knox, which was the expectation for me. And that was correct. And as soon as Dawson Knox got injured, Dalton Kincaid got his opportunity, got used in that offense more, And that also partially coincides with the new offensive coordinator that they got there, who I think utilized him much better, and he fits actually what Joe Brady, I think I got his name right, wants to do more, which is get the ball into these guys' hands in open space and then let them go. So a lot of things worked towards Dalton Kincaid that second half of the season. We even saw, I think, a little bit of a reduction in reliance once Dawson Knox came back, but I think this year he's going to be fully installed as a weapon in this offense. And the sky is the limit for Dalton Kincaid. Definite talent. He's only, he came into last year coming off of a pretty severe injury too. So all the more reason to get really excited about Dalton Kincaid, I think. Dalton Schultz, business as usual. He does it regardless of the quarterback, apparently. I was a little bit worried about that last year, so I pumped the brakes on getting too excited. I was right in with ECR on him. But, yeah, I mean, he did better than I thought he would do last year, especially with that rookie quarterback situation. I will say a little bit of concern, given, target share-wise might be a little bit more inconsistent. We did see a little inconsistency make him a little bit of a tough bet. So I could understand if you wanted to avoid him. That would definitely make sense as well. Something to keep in mind. And this just worked out like this. This was never planned out. The fact that we got Daniel Bellinger, Darren Waller here, the two last men standing. So Darren Waller just retired, made that official. So I'll take him out of my rankings. I originally had him up as business as usual, but Daniel Bellinger was in the Misfits group. I moved him up quite a bit in terms of his actual ranking, but he was still in this Misfit group. Now he's really high up in this more pessimism group. Still fairly pessimistic about the opportunity, the chances here, but I do like Daniel Bellinger. I thought that was a darn strong. How many of these guys are in this tight end class with Daniel Bellinger? That was kind of one of those deeper tight end classes. If you think of last year's tight end class, not this year's, but last year's as being a really good tight end class because it was really, really high on the top end guys. But the year before that, we had a bunch of guys who you just wouldn't be surprised if in 4 years they were fantastic. And Daniel Bellinger is, one of those guys as well. So there's reason for optimism in New York for him. He's going to be the tight end as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can see. So look out for news as far as that connection goes to see if we might not get him all the way up into a fingers crossed kind of territory. I could see it. So there it is. There's the tight end video. Once again, later this week, Wednesday, we'll go over either the sleepers or the bus. Probably do it in the same order. So I think sleepers, and then we'll do the bus on Friday because I don't know why, but that's what we'll do. And little channel announcements. If you want to become a member, that is how you can become a part of the members only league. So looking, like I said, to get together a listeners league here. For fantasy football. If we don't get enough people, so you become a member, you'll get a password to my Discord. On the Discord, there are several channels, and there is a channel titled 2024 Fantasy League! Where if you leave a comment letting me know that you are interested in joining a league, doing a league together. There will be no fee for the league. There we go. As far as other stuff that you get from being a member, you get access to my equalized value rankings, which are just like average fantasy points per week. However, take consistency into account, and I have proven time and time over again to myself and shown you examples of that in some of my work, where what that does is that's a more accurate read of the guys who helped you win more fantasy weeks than guys that they're ranked higher than. It's a very good home-brewed mathematical a thing that I did that you get access to for essentially free. I think it's 99 cents to become a channel member. So the equalized value charts right now is going to be all of last year's numbers, and that is good because you might have forgotten by the time that you get to drafts, preparing for your drafts, if you like to do your own homework, some of the guys how well they did or did not perform last year. So there you go. That's up there already. Also, once we get into the season, you will get access to it as I update it week in and week out. You're not going to want to, it's consistency based, so you're not going to want to be looking at that too early in the season. But once we get past week 6 or something, when you're starting to really think about some of those trades that could make or break your team, you can use that to maybe help find some of the guys who maybe are flying a little bit under the radar, a little bit underappreciated, or prevent yourselves from trading for a guy who's really had like one pop week, and that might be a little bit of a sobering reality of where his actual value lies. And then you get to your non-PPR and standard league format rankings. If you want one of my rankings, but you want me to do it given non-PPR or standard scoring or full PPR, I have channels on there. Full PPR and standard PPR and standard format are the titles of those channels. You just hop in one of those, let me know. I need demand before I'm going to spend the time to do that for you, but I will do that for you even if you are the one person, because I know that there are other people out there. I know there are people that ask me questions during the season about non-standard scoring and full PPR scoring. So I know you're out there, but you got to show me a little bit. I do have PPR because it works for both, and it's also the format that I like the most. All right, that is it. Let's move on. Get out of here. Peace out. Have a great Monday. Bye-bye.